Sandy Carter, and I'm Amazon Web Services VP of Public Sector Partners and Programs. And I am so excited to be here today talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is data. We're going to talk about how data can help you unlock innovation and accelerate change. And I think this is going to be a great session. You should get a lot of actionable takeaways from it. Let me know that. Follow me on LinkedIn and let me know what your comments are, or reach out anytime. So let's go ahead and get started. And, the theme of this is innovation and innovation with data. We all need to unlock innovation. And if you think about it, there was a recent study that was done that showed 93% of executives believe that innovation was the way that they were going to stay competitive in the marketplace. However, that same number of executives did not believe their own companies could innovate in the state they were in today. And I found this funny cartoon, which kind of shows why. You have a lot of old status quo in the organization. We're going to use data the way we've always done it, or we're not going to leverage data because we've tried it before and it didn't work, or we're going to wait and see what happens with the data movement. Maybe it'll go away. These types of attitudes obviously block that innovation, but you're here today. And so I know you're ready to unlock that power of data. And we are really interested in data because of the power that it brings. This was an Economist article, and it showed, if you really read through it, it showed that data is really a strategic asset for every organization, or should be, depending upon the way it's used. The phraseology that they leveraged was, the world's most valuable resource is now no longer oil, it's data. Maybe one of the ways that I would say it is that data is like soil, of which everything else grows from that soil, whether it's AI, ML, better business decisions, whatever you need really comes out of that data and the basis and the foundation that your company has around data. Now, not to beat a dead horse, but data does have a lot of gravity and does drive tremendous value, whether that is reduced cost, which is valuable, of course, to all of us, especially today in the post-COVID or pre-COVID or during COVID phase, but it also delivers insight. And that's where the innovation comes through. It accelerates insight because now you can use that data to analyze new trends, to figure out customer buying behaviors, using AI ML to really enhance your customer user experience. And you can see kind of our flywheel here all starts with either migrating your data to the cloud or building it natively on the cloud, that data lake that enables you to realize these benefits that just starts that flywheel moving. I found very interesting this study from Splunk, because what they were really looking at is the kind of the contradictions sometimes that organizations have. For example, while 81% of companies said data is extremely important to them or very important to them, 55% of their data, they said, was dark or unknown. They couldn't really get access to it. Whereas, 61% said that AI ML is going to be extremely important over the next 5 years. Only 12% of companies are using it today. And of course, if you look at what is really essential to an organization, extremely or very enthusiastic to work with data was 57%, but only 92% said that they were willing to learn a new data skill. So I thought this was really interesting to show there are words that people say about the power of data, or data is the new oil, but it's really about the action that you're going to take. And that's what I hope we're going to show you today are some of the core actions that you can take around that data. So I think the first step or actionable takeaway that you have is to really define a data strategy. Today, we know most companies have a business strategy, but how many of you have actually developed a data strategy? I saw this really come to life during COVID when countries were trying to get masks to the right hospital. They didn't have the data that they needed. They had a business strategy, but they didn't have the data that they needed to make those decisions. Or states wanting to ensure that they got food supplies into the right grocery stores. They had the right strategy, but they didn't have the data strategy to back up what they needed to do. So in my mind, your first action is, do you have a data strategy? Because that data strategy really informs and guides your business strategy. You can have a lot of great ideas, but you need to be able to execute them. And this also depends upon a data-driven culture. One of my favorite sayings is, culture eats strategy for lunch. So you can even define a business strategy and a data strategy, but unless you really have that culture that is a data-driven culture, you won't be able to make all the progress that you need. So if you think about that, your step number one is really match your data strategy to your business strategy. Make sure you have one defined, and then make sure that it's mapped together, because that data is really an asset. And so you have to manage it as an asset. And it's as important as anything in your company is today. In fact, many people believe more important. I'll just give you a quick example. So this is a healthcare example around a diabetes management system. And the really important thing is, not only do we have a great partner and a customer here that are showcasing the power of data, but we also see that getting data over to the cloud is important, because in this particular situation, that enabled a direct to cloud access to that healthcare information. But then being able to reduce the number of being readmitted to the hospital, or your mortality rate, comes from analyzing that data that went to the cloud. It just serves to illustrate the power of a data strategy and treating that data as a valuable asset that everybody needs to look at. Now, I hear a lot of questions about, okay, so what kind of people do we need to have in order to execute this strategy? Well, I think everybody knows that the hot new role today is a data strategist. You really do need a data strategist. And some of the things that those data strategists bring to the table are the ability to link that data into the business strategy, the ability to assess where your data lives. How much data do you have? What are the sources of the data? Do you have, the right quantity and quality of that data? We see, and these have been backed up by studies by the World Economic Forum, that data scientists, data strategists will be some of the hottest new skills that are out there in the marketplace. So make sure that you're looking for and determining some of these new roles and either hiring for them, or better yet, even retraining your staff around data. Back to that Splunk survey we looked at earlier. Now, one of the interesting things is, before COVID, we would do a lot of executive briefings. And in those executive briefings, people would come in and they would say, let's skip the data. Let's get straight to the machine learning strategy. But COVID really taught us all that before you develop that machine learning strategy, you must have a data strategy. And why is that? Well, if you want to build a training module for machine learning, or you even want to use, some of the new reinforcement techniques, you have to have data that will guide that algorithm. And having the right data makes all the difference in the world. It's the difference of having good, solid decisions come out, or decisions that are based on the data, but that are incorrect. And so that machine learning strategy is really dependent all on data. Data quality. Is the data valued, trusted, the right data? Data quantity. Do you have enough data? If you don't, do you need to buy data? Is there another strategy for you to get enough data to make the right decisions? And then what is the data source? So do you know where the data is coming from? I was recently with a partner, and they were so excited because they were testing out some machine learning models. And in the test, they came up with a big aha moment, a big insight from the data. And they wanted to go and show their board. Their board meeting was 2 days away, and they had to get in to show their board. Well, we kept asking them, are you sure this is the right data? Did you have enough data? Was it the right quality data? And they were really so into the machine learning, the technology, that they really took their eye off the ball of the data. Well, long story short, they went into their board. The very first question that someone asked was about the data, and they couldn't answer the question. The second question was also about the data, and they discovered that the data had come from the wrong source. So therefore, the conclusions were wrong. So the really cool technology, the machine learning model, went out the door, and it was all about the data. So let me show you another example of this. It's one of the funniest ones for me anyway, that I love to look at, which is an experiment that we did with a university. So we decided as a researcher that we would use a neural net and we would set up a database of 14 million lines from romance novels. That's right, romance novels. And then what we would do is we would build from that an algorithm that would tell a story by looking at a picture based on the data that was going in, right? So the source were romance novels. Did we have enough quantity? Of course. We had 14 million lines of the data. And so what came out, you can obviously see this picture here, are two sumo wrestlers, right? But remember, we added the data source from a romance novel. And so what came out was a story that really didn't explain the picture, but knowing that the source was romance novels, you can see how it was, right? He was a shirtless man. In the back of my mind, I let out a curse as he leaned over to kiss me. Well, he's obviously not kissing him. They're fighting. But again, the data source, even though the algorithm was powerful, spit out the wrong insight because you didn't have the right data. And I know everybody laughs at this. I use this in executive EBCs, and they think it's so funny until they realize that this is what they're doing with their business data. It's not as dramatic as seeing two sumo wrestlers in a romance story, but when you stop and pause and you think about your own data, then you have to realize maybe my source is wrong too. So I think the second action that you really need to take is to look at that data source and where you're going to drive that source from. And the next area I really want to talk to you about is about the quality of the data and the quantity of the data. Now, since COVID, there's been a big increase in IoT. And why do I bring IoT up when we're talking about data? Well, IoT and the IoT sensors that are out there are now on everything, on airline plane wheels, to farmers in the soil, to being on helmets for people in the army. These billions of devices help you make better decisions because they're generating all of this data. And so you get better data quality and better data quantity because of IoT. Now, I mentioned COVID, and the reason I mentioned COVID is that IDC told us that the use of IoT sensors to provide data has now gone up by over 400% because during COVID, people didn't want to be exposed. And so they used devices, drones, robots in order to collect data, causing the expansion of data being driven by IoT. I have many partners that are telling me that their customers are coming to them now saying, I have built this entire community of IoT partners around me, and now I really need to understand all the different types and sources of data and consume all that new data now to make better business decisions. A couple of examples of that I love to show. One is Electronic Caregiver, who is one of our partners. And I like this story because they worked with the University of New Mexico to collect data. They used electronic cameras to watch how the elderly walked and sometimes lost their balance. They used floor sensor mats with IoT sensors in them to determine angles and motion that might cause a fall. And they really expanded that data to ensure that they had a good level of quantity and quality of data that was coming in through all of this IoT usage to really help predict if an elderly person might potentially fall, or what types of monitors do they need to be better protected if they're living at home. In fact, some of the interesting studies were that men and women fall differently. Different triggers exist because of the different physics that exist between a man and a woman. Really interesting stuff that you can learn from the data. Well, the really cool thing is now with the insights from that data, Electronic Caregiver now has Addison, who you see on the screen. She is an AR/VR mobile device that now the elderly can use at home. And how powerful during this last year that we've had to live at home and work at home with COVID to have something like that based on all that data, the right quality and the right quantity in order to make the right business decisions. But it's really not just in healthcare. I know I've given you two healthcare examples so far, diabetes management and now kind of caring for the elderly with potentials for falls. but it's being used everywhere. So I love this story. Saildrone came to speak with us at reInvent. And Saildrone has a just fabulous use of IoT sensors. They were telling the story where in the ocean, there just aren't that many sensors. And so there's a lot of data that just cannot be collected by sensors that had to be done manually. Well, that's not as effective or efficient. And so they created this unmanned surface vehicle that used sensors actually to navigate the oceans around the world. So think about the wind and the waves and everything that has to hit it. But then as they were kind of using Saildrone to go around the world, they also were collecting data. So air temperature, water temperature, what's happening on the surface, what's happening below the surface of the water. They were leveraging this data now, this real-time streaming of all this data to enable their customers now to make better business decisions. Over 72 different data sets just from their Antarctic trip or mission alone. So again, I think it always starts with the data, that soil, that things grow up from. That's really where you have to start, is around your data. Last example I wanted to use is from outside the US. It is another healthcare example, but it's RumiBot, which is based out of Mexico. And during COVID, RumiBot, this robot, had sensors on it, not only to direct it where to go in the hospital, but also sensors to measure your temperature, how you're breathing, your blood pressure. And they would use RumiBot as the first line of defense, gathering all this data and then analyzing it to present, I think you do have COVID, or I think you don't have COVID. Let's route you to the right area of the hospital, both protecting the first responders as well as the other potential patients around from risky situations. Another very powerful use of IoT, generating a lot of that data and then analytics to make the right business decisions. So now, one of the areas that we really want to help you focus on is called a data-led migration. And a data-led migration is a little different than an application-led migration. Both are very powerful, but different in their usage. A data-led migration begins with the data. And it's not just about moving the data to the cloud into a data lake. But once you get the data into the cloud, it's about using the data in an analytics engine or machine learning model that we've been talking about to really get some of that real-time insight so that you can make better business decisions. I think this is really powerful. We found that these migrations have a fast velocity and a quick time to value because they're directly going to some of the business decisions you have to make. So I would love you to consider looking at a data-led migration and what that really involves. So we laid out these 4 strategic steps to get you to that real-time value. Starting off with actually migrating the data and migrating that into a data lake. Once the data is in the data lake, maybe also in a data warehouse, then applying analytics to that data. And then hopefully getting up to be able to visualize the data and use machine learning on it to even get further and deeper insights from the data. Now, these 4 steps I think are really important because obviously you're not going to do analytics as quickly and as valuably on premises that you would in the cloud. And using machine learning, where you really need a lot of compute power, you really want to leverage the cloud and its benefits in order to leverage the power of the data as well. So what I'd like to do now is to spend just a few minutes on each of these steps to kind of walk you through maybe some insight and ways that we could help you in getting to that real-time value or unlocking that innovation of the data. So let's start first with the migration. Now, migration really has 3 steps. Assess what you want to migrate over. So how many types of data do you have? How many databases do you want to come over? It's called an assessment. It's really where we help you build the business case. The second stage is mobilize, so that we'll help you build a project plan for how you'd move that data from on-premises over to your data lake. And then, of course, we assist you in migrating the actual migration itself and sometimes modernize. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes people will have data maybe stuck in a legacy database like SQL Server. and you don't just want to migrate that over. You really want to maybe move it to a new source or a new way, like with Aurora. So you're going to migrate and modernize in that same step. Now, because we know that this process is really based on a lot of best practices, we did introduce a new program for you called MAP, Migration Acceleration Program. And if you're a partner or a customer, you can use and leverage this funding by step to help you really accelerate your migration and really to beef up that velocity, which most of the customers have told us that's what they're looking for: migration, velocity, and value from the migration. So check out our MAP program, our Migration Acceleration Program. Here at the bottom, you can see both TC and Doug from Inquisit, one of our great business partners who have a migration competency, really talking about the power of this to help organizations and companies and agencies really get their data to the cloud and then use it by helping customers focus on the skill sets, what to look at in their operation side, some of those upfront costs that could be over a period of time, either a long-term perspective or a short-term perspective as well. So that was the first step, was actually migrating the data. And then where do you put the data? Typically what we're seeing now are that cloud data lakes are really the future. And a data lake, I think, is really interesting because a data lake is a little different than a data warehouse. So a data lake has data in an unstructured fashion. There's really no hierarchy. There's no organization between the two individual pieces of data. It's kind of your data in its rawest form. It's not processed. It's not analyzed. A data warehouse stores data in its original manner. So everything is archived and ordered in a defined way. Both are very valuable. But what I want to spend my time on now is the data lake. And if you think about the data lake, there are a couple of steps that I thought were interesting for building and managing the data lake. First, it starts by setting up the storage that you need or require, and then you're going to move the data from on-premises to the cloud. After you do that, you'll cleanse it and prep the data. Why do you want to cleanse the data? Well, you don't want data that's incorrect in your data lake. Then what you do is you move to configuring and enforcing security. Everybody knows that security is one of the most important areas for all of us. I know Andy Jassy likes to refer to security as job zero or priority zero. There's nothing more important than that. So configuring and setting up security and compliance processes or policies is really important as a step for getting your data into the data lake. And then, of course, making the data accessible, right? If the data is just there, it's not really adding any value. You want to make the data now accessible so that you can do analytics on that data. Now I think is where we really get interesting, right? Because now we've got the data migrated and it's now in a data lake. So now you want to do analytics. And analytics is a place where we see the power of our public sector partners. In fact, I just got two examples here. One is Snowflake, where you can really do rapid analytics. So it combines all of the data for all the users. It allows that data sharing, requires almost zero management, and it makes that data available for use in analytics. And then Tableau, another business partner of ours that visualizes the data. And I think that, at least for me, I'm a very visual person. Being able to see the data helps me understand the data. It helps me uncover new insights. And it helps me then create a culture that is data-driven. We use Tableau in a lot of our dashboards to run our business because it is visual and it does enable you to see those insights. So analytics is really important. And I'll just let you know that AWS has more data lakes and more analytics than anywhere else. We have tens of thousands of data lakes that are running on AWS today across every industry. So whether you're in the financial industry, public sector, telecommunications, we can find you some great best practices and great case studies for looking at how to build a data lake and then how to use a data lake for analytics, whether you choose to use an AWS product or one of our great partner products for that analytics and visualization. Now, if we think about the next step, it's where many of you wanted to start at the very beginning, right? Machine learning. And our goal is to put machine learning in the hands of every developer and every data scientist. And to do that, we've been drinking our own champagne. We've been leveraging machine learning at Amazon forever, essentially. The personalized recommendations that you get, around using Amazon or shopping. If you look at Amazon Prime Air, we use drones, or Alexa. Think about Alexa and all the things we've learned from voice-driven interactions, or Amazon Go. If you haven't been to a Go little store, it's amazing. You walk in, look up. The first thing you should do is look up. There are cameras and everything that help to provide that data so that when you choose to walk out of the store, you actually don't have to go through a checkout. You don't have to personally scan it yourself. It will recognize everything that you've collected on any part of your body, and you can walk out and then pay the bill automatically. These are some of the heritage and the history of machine learning at Amazon. And we apply that in many different domains. Whatever your domain is that you're looking to leverage it, we have best practices that we can share with you. So again, from finance to robotics to industry verticals as well. Now, I love the story of DARPA because DARPA is actually leveraging all of their data, but they're using it in an explainable AI way. Another one of the really top topics in AI today. So if you think about DARPA, one of the things that they tried first in the spirit and culture of innovation, which is about experimentation, right? They took everyone through the machine learning process. They had developed some algorithms, and then they spit out a decision. And people were like, well, why did that decision come out? Why not something else? How can I trust that decision? And so this hot new topic that we're seeing today in the market is explainable AI. So when you develop the machine learning algorithm, it stays the same, but what changes is that you have an explainable model, an explainable interface, so people understand how that conclusion was being reached. So that then, as a decision comes out based on the data, you understand why or why not. You understand why I can trust that decision and the data that it was based upon. I think another great example, hopefully some of you saw my post on LinkedIn. AWS was essential in helping NASA get to Mars. It was the cloud that was used. And one of our partners, Maxar, really worked with robotics. And if you think about this is really a combination of everything we've talked about. All the data that went into rover that went on Mars, whether it was the robotics or just moving around, all the data that had been collected and used to train where the rover went, what it looked at, where the camera was. Very powerful use of data, getting to a data lake, using analytics, and eventually leveraging machine learning and AI. So excited about our mission to Mars and what we were able to contribute in that world-changing event. Okay, so now let me give you 3 more examples of companies whose data has gravity, whose data is helping them with innovation. Now remember, we talked about a data-led migration was really about migrating the data to a data lake and then using analytics and machine learning to get some insight from it. So our first example involves one of our great data-led migration partners, Databricks. They were working with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So first, they migrated the data, 240 billion data rows to the cloud in a week. Yes, that's right, a week. They increased their data sources, so they understood the value of the quantity of data. It's used by over 7,000 data analysts and scientists today. So that's about the data. What about the analytics? Well, first of all, because it's now in the cloud, it was 24 times faster. What are they using it for? Well, which application forms are submitted most? How many new applications will we have next year so we can predict the resources that require? Probability of no-shows, or evaluating interviews for trends. So many use cases that now that they have that data and an increased quantity that they can make better business decisions with. Let's go to the second example. I love this example too. Splunk is such a great partner of ours with a great customer, FINRA. FINRA, as you know, has billions and billions of financial transactions a day. They first migrated the data. They moved the data from 170 applications to the cloud, 100 billion transactions a day. That is mind-blowing, right? All that data. But they didn't just put the data in the data lake. Then they used it to analyze and to really understand what was happening. Stock and options transaction, cybersecurity and identifying cyber attacks. And then looking at just like badge and access information. Again, these are just 3 examples of the many things that they use that data for to make better business decisions. And then I just had the opportunity to meet this amazing partner, Morris y Opazo. They're based in Chile, and they do business in the United States, Chile, and Peru. And I was really excited. They've got a data lake competency. They've got the AIML competency, many more competencies. But they worked with Aguas Nuevas, which is water controller in Chile. And what they were able to do is to move the data of 550,000 users to the cloud. And now they're using that data to analyze a whole set of things about the equipment, leaky faucets, how to make things more conservative in this climate-driven world today. So it's not just the US. Globally, this trend of data-led migrations is really driving forward. Now, those of you who know me know I love quotes. One of my favorite quotes is around basketball. One of my favorite things is basketball. And Michael Jordan, obviously, is one of my favorite players. And I like this quote. It didn't come from him, but from a rookie, Stacey King. And Stacey said, "I'll always remember this as the night that Michael Jordan and I combined to score 70 points. Stacey King scored 1 point. The reason I say this is we want to partner with you on data-led migrations, getting to the value, unlocking the innovation. So whether you score 69 points or we score 1 or vice versa, or we share, we want to help you in this mission. So if you are listening today and you are a partner, we want you to really take advantage of some of the new programs that we have around data-led migration and that analytics and AIML. Please reach out to us at this email and make sure that you contact us to get some more information. If you're not a partner and you want to be, please join our AWS Partner Network. We would love to have you be part of the value chain, delivering that value to our customers. And if you happen to be a customer listening today and you have questions, email us at this email address and we'll get right back to you and talk to you about how to build a data strategy, how to make sure that you have the right source, quantity, and quality of data, how to make sure that you're looking at building a data lake, using analytics on it, and then at the end, the real game, using analytics and machine learning. Hopefully you've had a really interesting time today, taking away those actions that we just talked about. I appreciate your time and your interest, and I'm hoping that you're not going to wait, but that you're really going to take a look at that data, build a strategy, and then let us help you build that data lake and get it to a point where you can add value to your organization with better analytics and insight. Again, my name is Sandy Carter. I'd love to have you follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, ask me questions so that we can help you. Thank you. Stay safe and stay healthy.